idea for the show.
I still don't know what the idea is.
It's about nothing.
Right.
Everybody's doing something. We'll do nothing.
They say, what's your show about? I say nothing.
There you go.
I think you may have something here.
Cross Coast Bias presents the League About Nothing podcast.
All right, everybody, welcome back. We have our Week 6 recap. We had another exciting week in the NFL. League median score of 200 points, so a bit of fireworks this time around. Before we get into recapping those scores, we're going to go over waivers, injuries, and trades. Let's start off with the waivers. You ready for this one?
Are you sure you don't want to talk about my continued existential dread?
No, we're getting there. Listen, we cannot start off every week with Al's personal therapy session. We'll get there when we get to your team.
But I need it.
Hold on. Let me do waivers first.
Okay.
We had 4 players claimed, $3 spent, and 0 points scored. That's the end of waivers.
Okay, moving on.
Yep. Moving on, we had a kind of a tough week for injuries. Nothing season ending, it appears, but still some pretty big name players going out and getting injured. Starting off at the running back position, you had Tajay Spears hurt his hamstring. He's listed as week to week.
Yeah, anybody with a hamstring injury, when you're quickly ruled out and don't get anywhere next to coming back on the field, I'm guessing it's probably going to be multiple weeks. We saw a couple of them this week. This was one of them.
Yeah, so Spears just recently changed teams in our league. You traded him away to Flea's team, so this is a
Spoiler alert.
No, okay, it's fine.
We didn't get to trades yet.
We'll get there when we get there, but I want to mention at least this is an injury for Flea's team because
no longer on my roster.
This is going to be unfortunately for Flea a bit of a theme today. Because our next one also is a running back who is week to week with a hamstring injury on Flea's team. That would be Travis Etienne. So we can kind of lump these two in together. It's not good. Hamstring injuries often linger. They can be a long-term problem. And these are two fairly significant pieces and fairly significant running backs for her team.
Yeah, well, that's one of the reasons she wanted Spears in the first place was kind of bolster the running back depth. And I did tell her that he was in fact currently injured, but she's thinking more long-term anyway. Sure. with a guy like Spears.
Yeah, he's on the younger side of things. So even if he's out for a couple of weeks, she's looking at him for years to come.
Right. And she also has Tank Bigsby, who is Travis Etienne's backup. So she has some depth there, at least to cover Etienne for the short term.
Yeah. And even though that team has looked pretty bad, they ran the ball pretty well. So they've been getting points at the position.
Yeah, they didn't. I mean, 2 weeks ago, we saw them both in her lineup. This week, not so much. Actually, the Dearness Johnson played the most snaps because they were losing by so much. It was all pass plays. So I'm assuming that we'll see Tank if it's a run game, and we'll see Dearness if it's going to be a passing game. But considering they're playing the Patriots, probably going to be a lot of running.
That's sadly true for New England and all of us who are going to watch that London game.
Oh, back-to-back London games for the Jaguars. They should have a huge advantage. They're already acclimated to the tea and biscuits.
Is that something you have to get acclimated to?
I don't know. I've never been. I assume so.
This is like where you're told not to drink the water on vacation. This is like, right. Be careful with the tea and biscuits. Make sure you adjust to the time lag and watch out for, I don't know, the Londoners. Every time I think of London and traveling to London, all I can think of is the scene at the beginning of Snatch where Avi's talking about going to London and the other guy said, London, 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 London. Yes, London. Bad food, worse weather, cup of tea, like Mary fucking Poppins, London. I don't know the exact but that scene lives in my head. And I think of it at least once.
Well, better that when I think of it. I think of Euro Trip.
That's because it's the only movie you watched for like 5 years straight. for the first 5 years that I knew you.
It's a good movie.
It's fair.
Anyway, let's talk about more hamstrings.
Yep. All right. Moving on to the next hamstring injury. Who do we have? Jerome Ford, also week to week with a hamstring injury, this time for Criddle's team.
The good news is, looks like Nick Chubb is going to be making his triumphant return here shortly. Maybe just in time.
And he's on Criddle's roster, so he's got that position locked up.
This is why you handcuff people.
It's so strange to me, the difference in handcuffing between best ball leagues and roster leagues, because with the best ball, they just slide right in. You don't miss a beat. Even if you had no idea it was coming, or, like ETN got hurt very early in the game,
right,
and basically didn't come back. Doesn't really affect Flea all that much because she had the handcuff. How much space do you use on backup players? How much do you try to maximize points each week?
Yeah, it's definitely a philosophical choice, whether you're even if you're, for one, to handcuff at all, but two, do you handcuff your own players or do you handcuff other teams' running backs to maybe maximize your amount of starters? If somebody else's starter goes down and you have their handcuff, suddenly you have an extra player versus a floor play of having your own player covered.
Yeah, and you also have to take into account that it's sometimes difficult to actually acquire those handcuffs because sometimes people want those, so it's an opportunity cost for your roster as well.
Sometimes the handcuffs aren't who we think they are.
That's also true.
At the point of the offseason where you're doing roster construction, sometimes we guess wrong. And sometimes the handcuff goes down too, and we're down to the third and fourth string running backs.
Roster construction is a 365-day-a-year endeavor. It's not an off-season only task.
Well, for some of us.
It's fair. All right. Next injured player on your team, Jordan Mason, also on the 49ers, more importantly, injured his shoulder and left the game early.
Yep. He took an awkward hit where defender landed on him and sprained his AC joint. He briefly came back in the game for the first play of the second half. He had an 8-yard run to the sidelines and then ran back off and did not come back in again. So it seemed like he was available for emergency purposes, but they didn't want to risk re-aggravating it. He is practicing, although with a non-contact jersey. So I guess we'll have to see if the medical staff clears him to play this week. But the fact that he's out there in any capacity is promising.
Yeah, and an AC joint has to be a little bit different. I'm used to seeing that injury for quarterbacks. It's got to be a little bit different for a running back who's not having as much a range of motion with the arm.
Yeah, the biggest thing is just it's so easy to re-aggravate if you land on it. You try to break a tackle or, take any kind of hit in that area. It's very easy to re-aggravate it. But you can get an injection. You can play with a harness. So We'll see if they decide to do that or not.
They'll have to do the thing that they did with Adrian Peterson after he was coming back from the ACL and only have him run to one side and cut the other way.
Right.
just let him always be going to the side of the non-injured shoulder.
Right. We can only run to the right side. See how long it takes the defense to figure that out. They're only calling plays to the right.
I would say you probably get away with it for a while, to be honest with you. Like after the game, they'll realize it, but during the game, it'd probably take at least 4 or 5 runs before they even learn.
10 straight plays to the right. What are the odds that they run it to the left this time?
All right. We're going to move on from the running back position to the wide receiver position. We had a couple of big name players come out with concussions this week. One was Marvin Harrison, the other Chris Olave. We're just going to say the same thing we always say with concussions. They're in the protocol. We don't know. We hope it's not bad.
Ain't going to play this week. Olave for sure because they play on Thursday.
Yeah, no, he's not coming.
No one's clearing the concussion protocol that quickly.
No.
He's not practicing in any capacity. He's not going to be out there. And we're assuming that Harrison's not going to be out there either. We haven't really seen anyone clear the concussion protocol in under a week yet.
No, that didn't happen last season either until we got to like week 15. And,
right. Once the games are more important, then suddenly people start clearing it quicker. Yeah. Shocking.
No, last year it was insane. I was like, oh, nobody's clearing these protocols at all. And then all of a sudden, everyone was clearing them in 4 days.
Yep, we definitely talked about that last year.
Was not suspicious at all.
We definitely talked about that last year. I'm sure we'll see the same this year.
And Marvin Harrison Jr. on Ruggs' team, so Rugg not competing isn't really particularly worried about that. Olave on your team. We'll
Apparently
get to
not.
your existential crisis later. We're not there yet, everyone. Slow down.
Apparently not competing either anymore.
All right. So similar to Olave, his teammate, Raheed Shaheed, injured his knee and is also not practicing. I don't know exactly when this happened, but I did notice that Shaheed had 1 catch on 7 targets. So maybe it happened early and it was affecting him throughout the game. I'm not, that could just be a factor of the poor quarterback play as well.
I didn't hear a lot about it during the game or immediately after, but apparently somewhere along the end of the game, he picked up a knee injury and they're testing. They're not sure of the severity, which is not a promising sign.
He's going to go for further tests is what they said. So that's not great.
Yeah, it's they're concerned right now that he could miss some time, but nobody really knows yet until I guess they get the imaging done.
Yeah. But obviously that's very concerning.
The bigger concern for him this week was Spencer Rattler being his quarterback. I think
again, one catch on 7 targets.
1 for 7. Rattler had some struggles in his first game, as you might expect from a day 3 rookie.
A rookie 5th rounder, yes.
His debut had some problems with the speed of the game.
And maybe that'll get better for him, and maybe it won't. But
the good news is we're going to see him in prime time on Thursday night without any receivers.
It's going to be a tough week this week for him. Short turnaround.
Listen, there's a
wide receiver chance, 1, no wide receiver 2.
There's a chance that Taysom Hill is back from his cracked ribs. So if he's there, problem solved.
If he's problem back, solved, isn't they're going to make him play quarterback again?
They're going to make him do everything.
Taysom Hill is what Tim Tebow should have been.
Right. If he had actual athletic ability.
Yeah. I feel like if Tebow had started down the path of hybrid player right from the beginning, he might have been able to figure it out a few years in. Because, Taysom Hill is not a young guy. He's in his young relative.
37 years old.
He's for football purposes, he's old. I think he's 34, isn't he? Or is he actually 37?
No, he's not actually 37.
I say he's in his 30s, in his mid 30s, which again for football is ancient.
Right. Well, he came into the league at 30, so
yeah. Shout out Brandon Whedon. All right. Other wide receivers with some injuries. Dontavian Wicks also hurt his shoulder. I forgot to mention Shaheed on Flea's team. So she's going to be down quite a few players this week. But again, Dontavian Wicks hurt his shoulder. Also on Ruggs' team, he's missing Marv and Dontavian. Haven't really heard any updates on Wicks. I don't know if you've seen anything.
No, they're guessing it's an AC joint as well. It's a little bit more difficult for a wide receiver to play with an AC joint sprain than a running back. So I'm guessing he's probably not going to be out there this week at least.
Yes, that'll give a little bit more clarity on which Green Bay receivers to start in your daily lineups, I guess.
Well, we got the surprise return of Christian Watson. We thought he was going to miss a while. He only missed 1 week. He was out there last week, scored a touchdown.
I'm sure he'll be gone by next week again, unfortunately. All right. Only other wide receiver that I thought worth mentioning, and barely at that, is Quentin Johnston. He hurt his ankle. He's been okay this year, so I feel like we should bring him up. He's on Georgia Mike's team. Georgia Mike has been adding players left and right, so hopefully he can weather the storm of missing Quentin Johnston for a week.
Based on the way he's played the last few weeks, I don't think he'll miss him.
Sure. He's had his bye already, so that skews things quite a bit. He's like wide receiver like 50-ish, which
he scored a bunch of touchdowns early, and that was about it.
Look, if you're just outside wide receiver 4 range in a super flex start 12 best ball dynasty league, you're worth mentioning.
Yeah, that's fair. He has been in the lineup a few times this year already.
Exactly.
More than he was at any point last year, so we'll take it. But yeah, that'll definitely hurt his chances of being productive going forward.
All right, over to the tight ends. Just a couple of quick ones here. Hayden Hurst hurt his groin. Uh, don't really have any further updates on that. That was a timeshare with Disley anyways, and they weren't getting a ton of work even with it, but he's on Judd's team. Hurst Judd's depth a little bit at the position.
Not if he gets Taysom Hill back this week.
Stop. We can't just relate everything back to Taysom Hill.
Are you sure about that?
Pretty sure. All right, you could try it on this next one. Dallas Goedert hurt his hamstring. There have been no updates on this one. How do you get that one back to Taysom Hill? Let me lay it on me.
Yeah, he only played about 3 snaps and then was immediately down. So I'm guessing that it's probably a bad strain and we're not going to see him for a few weeks. Obviously, we're just speculating here, but we'll see if he can have a Taysom Hill like turnaround and get back out there quickly.
Hold on.
You're welcome.
And Goddard, as is the case with almost every Eagle, is on Criddle's team. Good luck to Criddle. All right, that basically covers the injuries that we could find. I'm sure we missed someone or something, and
The ones that we remembered.
Those are the ones that I could find by Googling, and the ones that I had written down on Sunday. I really should start writing things down on Saturday or on Thursday because I forget those. All right, we're gonna keep moving. We're gonna go over to the lineups and check out those the weekly matchups.
You don't want to do trades first?
I was thinking like, wow, that went really fast. That would be why, because I forgot all the trades. All right, we had 7 2 weeks ago. We had 6 last week. We're back up to 7 this week. Not bad. We're holding pretty steady here. Some of these are pretty bad though, so we'll move relatively quick through them. All right, first trade we have to get to is a trade between our very own Alvernaz 13 and Benign Rug.
Trade of the week.
No. I don't even know if it was the trade of the day. All right. We had Rugg acquired Khalil Herbert and a 2025 fourth round pick attached to Al's roster. In return, Al received Tim Patrick and Xavier Hutchinson. All
What
right.
a sad day.
Your trade. Walk us through it.
Very sad to lose Khalil Herbert. One of my few startup picks still remaining on my roster.
If we're down to like Justin Jefferson, and that's it at this point.
But I was pretty desperate for bodies this week. I'm running low on actual players that score points. So I took a shot on a couple of guys. You know, Herbert has basically been phased out of the rotation. Early on, he was kind of splitting a little bit of time behind Swift, and Roshan was a healthy scratch, and then they decided, we're going to use Roshan going forward as the backup, and Herbert's been sitting on the bench doing nothing. The only snaps he's played in the last few weeks are the kneel downs at the end of the games. It's literally the only snaps that he's been on the field for. Yeah. A couple of kneel downs.
The last 3 weeks, 0% snaps, 4% snaps, 5% snaps, and 0 points across the board.
Yeah, so I needed some players who might score points. Grabbed a couple of receivers. Hutchinson, I thought maybe would have some short-term value with Nico on IR. We saw, guys like Noah Brown flash for weeks when there were injuries last year. Didn't really work out this week because they didn't really need to throw very much, considering they blew out their opponent. Yeah. So he got me a nice round 0. And then Tim Patrick, he's kind of moved into that wide receiver 3 role for Detroit, and I have Goff, so I figured cheap stack. You never know.
Yep, seems like he's ahead of Raymond there.
Did not help this week very much, but take a shot.
Oh, double-digit points. He was, not terrible.
Right. The price was cheap for Rugg. You got a guy that could potentially come into value. You never know with running backs. Either an injury to Swift or Johnson could put him back in that rotation, or even next year he could be onto a new team. He's been very productive when given opportunities, so it's a good hold. And then
it's a nice stash for him. And guys like Patrick and Hutchinson aren't long-term answers for his roster, and he's looking to the future.
Right.
Yeah, makes sense. Our next trade. This one's a doozy. You traded again.
Trade of
with
the week.
No, stop, please. You can't. Not unless Taysom Hill is involved. Georgia Mike, you traded with Georgia Mike. Georgia Mike received Ezekiel Elliott. You received a 2025 fifth-round pick attached to Georgia Mike's roster. This one is pretty cut and dry. Georgia Mike gets Zeke, who's still getting some of the work.
It's a handcuff to the guy he just traded for last week.
Yeah, he got Dowdle from me last week, the real true starter in Dallas. And now he's got Zeke, who's the backup in Dallas. All he has to do now is go trade with Big, and he can pick up Dalvin Cook.
Well, to be fair, Zeke had more carries for most of that game until the very end.
Just going to ignore the Dalvin Cook that he's been talking about in chat for months.
Zeke was
come on.
Zeke was getting fed early in the game. Unfortunately, it was not very effective, and they went back to Dowdle in the fourth quarter. But yeah, you never know. Listen, any running back could be valuable if a player in front of them gets injured. This could be the best fifth-round pick he ever spent. I know that because last year I spent a fifth-round pick for Ezekiel Elliott, and he was my running back one for most of the playoffs. So you never know. There's never enough bodies at running back.
The interesting thing about Zeke is last year he was obviously on the Patriots last year. He was used heavily in the passing game. And this year he's not used at all in the passing game. And Dallas got absolutely boat raced. And basically that's why he got sent to the bench and never came back.
Yes, because Hunter Lupke apparently is a better fit for third down snaps.
He's available. Georgia Mike, you got other fifth-round picks. I know you do. All right. I've apparently moved on from trying to sell Rico Dowdle to trying to sell Hunter Lipke. All right, we're going to move on. Our next trade, finally, one that doesn't involve you. Mel Crisp, the commissioner, trading with the Juddernauts. Judd picks up Jake Browning and a 2025 fourth-round pick from Mel's roster. And Mel picks up the 2025 third-round pick from Judd's roster.
Speaking of handcuffs.
Yeah. Judd gets the handcuff to his QB1 or QB, I don't know, who's higher, Love or Burrow, whatever, doesn't matter. Picks up the handcuff to one of his quarterbacks. Mel moves up around in next year's draft. Pretty straightforward.
Yep.
Mel said he was trying to clear roster spots because this isn't the only trade of this nature he made. I'm going to skip over a trade and cover the other version of this that Mel did. Mel again gets a 2026, or this time it's 26 instead of a 25, third round pick. And in return, Georgia Mike picks up Mac Jones and Mel's 2025 fifth round pick. So pretty much the same as the one with Judd. Mel sends out a backup quarterback and a later pick, picks up a third rounder.
And Georgia Mike spending like a 18-year-old with their first credit card.
Yep. Spending like a sailor on leave.
Buying up everybody.
Yeah. It gives him a handcuff to Lawrence. We saw Jones in garbage time this week, so we know he's, the number 2 there.
Yeah, it's smart. When you don't have the assets anymore to go out and buy more starting quarterbacks, and at least if you got your handcuffs pretty cheap, you're covered.
If you get your own guys covered, you at least have the same number of quarterbacks going forward.
Right.
All right. We skipped over one there to pair those two Mel trades together because of their similar nature. But the other one that we skipped over was a trade between myself and Flea. Flea picked up another running back. She picked up Tyler Goodson. In return, I got Flea's 2027 fourth round pick. So eventually I'll get to make another pick.
2027.
Yeah.
Speaking of running back depth, actually Tyler Goodson looked like the far better running back this week between him and Trey Sermon. Shockingly, Trey Sermon did not look great.
I was having this discussion with Big, and I basically was like, yes, neither one of these players are particularly good, but there's a difference in how bad each of them is respectively. Like I said, like if you were doing like the Madden rankings, I don't know what Goodson is, but he's probably like a 62 or something, like, like he's better than nothing. He's not great. And Sermon's probably down at that like 47 or something.
Poor Trey Sermon. It was not.
It didn't look great for
I
Sermon. Not that Goodson was setting the world on fire, but he appeared to be the more competent back.
looked far more effective. Yeah, I assumed that Sermon would get the early down kind of banger work, and then Goodson would play third down, passing downs, and that's how it started. But Sermon was just so ineffective that Goodson started to cut into a lot of the early down snaps as well. So we may see a different way that they are deployed this week if Taylor misses again, which we expect him to.
All right. Our next trade was between Georgia Mike and Mr. Good News. I am frankly shocked that Mr. Good News still had anything left to sell.
He still had Bucks running back one, Bucky Irving.
Running back two. Did you not see the
Wow.
box score this week?
This week he was running back two again.
Behind Tucker. Anyway, Georgia Mike picks up Bucky Irving. In return, Mr. Good News picks up 2026 second round pick and a 2026 fourth round pick, both attached to Georgia Mike's roster. So a solid return for Bucky Irving.
Yeah, for a guy he drafted in the fourth round a couple of months ago.
Yep.
He got that fourth round pick back and a second round pick. So it was a good return for a guy that's he's looked good. He's looked like, well, outside of this week in the Sean Tucker explosion, he's looked like the far better runner compared to Rashad White. And he was already starting to eat into that Rashad White dominant workload. He's basically turned it into a split job. And now the way that Tucker looked, we may see a three-headed monster with Rashad White getting the lesser third. So it was a good buy for Georgia Mike. He needed running back depth, and at least he was able to find one more before he ran out of picks.
He's been very creative in the running backs that he's added, and Irving looked very good, pretty much every opportunity he's gotten this year. So hopefully it continues in that vein for him, and he's got a guy long term. And like you said, it was a good job by Mr. Good News multiplying that fourth round pick asset. He could have held on to Irving here, and I don't think anybody really would have faulted him, but he's at the beginning of what appears to be a lengthy rebuild, and any opportunity to multiply an asset to that degree really kind of needs to be seized upon.
Right. We all know what the shelf life is like for running backs. Bucky Irving was not a highly drafted guy either. He's the guy right now, so take the value when you can. And for Georgia Mike, all he cares about are the points right now, so he'll take the points.
Yeah, that's about right.
Made sense from both sides.
So we have one more trade to get to. This one involving Flea Flickers again and your team. Go ahead.
This is me waving the white flag.
No, not that. You said it. You said it for. You said it for the first two trades that we got to with you, Will Herbert and Ezekiel Elliott. And now I'm literally laying it out for you to say trade of the week for Travis Kelce, and you're ignoring it.
Right, because those other trades were far more important.
Anyway, trade of the week: Travis Kelce and Tajay Spears going to Flea's team. Your team picking up Dalton Schultz and Flea's 2027 first round pick. Talk to me.
Yeah, I traded Travis Kelce for a teenager, basically. Is what happened here.
Isn't Schultz like 27?
I was referring to the pick, but yeah, also
Okay.
was involved in this
That
deal.
makes way more sense. No, that's true. 2027 is probably a teenager right now. Unless Brandon Whedon's coming back into the draft.
We can only hope. If he re-enters the draft, I will draft him. I do love my old players.
Okay,
But only if he
chances,
switches to running back.
So let's not pretend like you're ever going to make that 2027 pick. The odds that is on your team in 6 months, let alone 3 years.
That's a long time away.
Yeah. So you pick up a first round pick and a lesser tight end for the Spears and Kelce combo here. Obviously, this is you maybe not waving the white flag entirely, but basically running it up the flagpole a little bit here.
Yeah, it's probably not going to happen this year. The injuries and ineffectiveness has kind of mounted on me. I'm falling further and further behind the actual playoff teams and contenders, as we'll see
Of which
from
Flea is
my
clearly one.
as we'll see from my playoff odds here shortly after the matchups. So I'm not trying to completely tear down and sell everything and, do a Mr. Good News. Obviously, I still have a team. The framework of the team is still fine, but there are a couple of guys like Travis Kelce that have more value now than they probably will next year. So it makes more sense for a contending team that's actually trying to win this year. We've seen Travis Kelce in the finals on one roster or the other every year of this league. So he's clearly a difference maker in this format.
Yeah, and for Flea, we had talked about earlier in the year her probably holding back some of those picks to fill in holes as the season goes along. But here's the thing. Outside of quarterback, you're never going to have a bigger hole than at tight end.
Yeah,
And
she's
adding
had a
Kelce
hole.
now when he's
She's had-
available.
She's had a hole there pretty much all season. A lot of that was Ingram being hurt, but
Yeah.
she hasn't gotten any tight end production, not enough.
Well, here's the thing. Like, if she gets hurt, if she gets, like Spears and ETN getting hurt this week, or even Shaheed, she's got other people at those positions that can fill in. Finding guys like you found this week, where we were talking about Hutchinson and Tim Patrick, things like that can be done relatively inexpensively. Finding someone like Kelce and keeping him away from another contender, getting him on her roster now is worth using that first round pick, even if she technically doesn't need the player at this very moment.
Right. And we've seen the last couple of weeks of the Chiefs offense with Rashee Rice out. It's gone back to the Travis Kelce centric offense. There are not many tight ends in the league that command the majority of the offense's target share like Travis Kelce will do. So if there's one guy to bet a first round pick on, this is the guy.
Yeah, well said. All right. That catches us up on trades. I expect at least 7 trades again next week. I guess I have to put that on you because if you're selling, then
I'm working on it.
Yeah.
Working on it. Currently have about 15 offers out. Was trying to sneak some more in before we did this recording. They'll have to wait for next week.
not to bring up past other leagues or anything, but that was always my biggest issue with our redraft league and playing on the Yahoo platform was that Yahoo only allows you 6 outgoing trade offers at a time.
Right.
That's insane. I can't get by with 6 outgoing trade offers when I'm trying to sell or buy. That's not even half the league.
I very rarely have only 6 or less trade offers out at any one time.
All right, we're going to move on to the matchups. Everyone's
Do we have to?
Yes. We're starting with yours. Congratulations. You played the number 1 score this week.
It wasn't me. Spoiler alert.
Yeah.
The top score did not belong to me.
Not this time. Don't worry. I'm sure you'll have a boom week in like week 16 and lament what could have been. But for now, you did not. Our league median score, we mentioned off the top, 200.81. Solid score when we're over that 200 median, despite the fact that Mr. Good News is doing everything he can to drag it down to 0 with a 39.9.
Impressive.
So everyone's probably pretty used to the way we've done matchups by now. We're going to try to skim through these a little bit quicker so that we have a little bit more time to get to other things. So we're not going to go necessarily player by player the way we have. So we're going to start, as I said, with your matchup and your continuing existential crisis. Congratulations. You lost to Judd this week, 254.24 to 166.45. It was only about 90 points.
It was a beating.
Yeah, so a heck of a day for Judd. He gets that top score. Chris Godwin had a 40-point day for him. He had some really impressive scores. The tight end position remains a little bit of a a problem for him with Otten and Knox only combining for 20 points. But every other player on his team, double digits. Nice day.
Yep, 2 wins brings him to 9-3 on the season now.
Yep. And on the other side of things, your team struggled pretty much
Mightily.
pretty much across the board. You continue to have problems at that quarterback 2 position, not another quarterback in your super flex. Couple of bright spots. Your tight ends combined over 30 points. Tyrone Tracy had another breakout day here, 25 points. So nice to see that. Was it 4th round pick paying some early dividends?
Yep, he's looked very good. Handled bigger workloads this week than he ever has in his entire college career. So,
Well, he converted wide receiver. It's not like he was racking up, massive carry numbers.
right, he did play wide receiver for like his first 4 years of college. Glad to see they finally used him in the receiving game this week too. That was missing.
Good. 6
That was
targets,
missing
6
in his
catches.
debut.
He looked good out there.
For a guy that played receiver, you'd hope that he could add value as a receiver out of the backfield.
It's shocking how infrequently NFL teams seem to want to utilize guys that are pass catching specialists at the running back position as actual pass catchers.
Right.
I get it. It doesn't always fit what the offense wants to do, but if they're really good at it and you drafted them to do it, maybe let them do it.
I mean, why do it when you can throw it 3 yards to Wan'Dale Robinson every play?
All right. So as we said, Judd goes 2-0. You told us his record's 9-3. You unfortunately went 0-2, drops you down to 5-7. So tough one for you. All right. Our next highest scoring team this week was the Moops. Mel, the commissioner, puts up a 233.55. He gets 2 wins, takes out JMC, who had a 173.6. He unfortunately gets the 2 losses. Mel moves to 10-2. JMC drops down to 4-8. All right, for Mel, pretty much the same story as we've seen most of this season. Very solid numbers across the board. The tight end position, 33 points combined, was really a big difference maker in this because on the other side of things, JMC's tight end position, 8 points combined. For JMC, he sees a nice day from the recently acquired Josh Downs. Not a whole lot else to talk about in this matchup unless you got anything you wanted to touch on.
We saw the breakout game for Ray Davis on the Monday night slate.
That's true. He looked really good. Speaking of also
4th round
catching
running
the ball,
backs.
that was a 48-yard catch or something like that, didn't he?
Yep. And he had a 3-down skill set coming out. It's one of the reasons we liked him. And ending up in the Bills, we were hoping that he would kind of work his way into a committee, and it's going to be hard to not give him any touches going forward after Monday night's game.
Yeah. All right. Our next highest scoring team with a 233.36, just very, very slightly behind Mel's score. Beating out Mr. Good News, who put up a 39.9. I cannot believe this was almost a 200-point gap.
Is that the lowest score that we've had since
it
the
might
league
be. I really
has
should have gone back
existed?
and checked it.
We're just going to say yes. Because I can't imagine we had a score lower than 39.9 at any point.
I don't remember one. I remember.
This is the most bare bones roster that we've seen since this league has existed.
And he still had a single player in the double digits. Amari DiMercado, 12.15.
Sell him, get him off the roster. He's scoring points.
I'm sure he will if he can. Like he's selling everything. It's all got to go. It's the liquidation sale.
This is really incredible because with the amount of roster spots that we have, it's not easy to only score 39 points in a best ball this deep. He has done a lot of work to get to this point.
There are 6 zeros on this roster. Quarterback, running back, tight end, and 3 flex spots, which were filled with receiver, running back, and tight end. So 6 zeros is kind of incredible. All right, so let's take a quick look, big side of things. This is a day like we expected of this roster, where he had some big days from the running back positions and some decent days from the wide receiver positions. And finally, he's getting some life from McBride and Laporta at the tight end position, combining for almost 40 points.
Yep, he's got a deep, talented roster. We expect him to score in this range pretty much every week without any really big boom games. Just kind of had a bunch of solid games, but he has so much depth and talent that even with the bye weeks kicking in, it's not slowing him down at all.
No, it's not. And I want to give this opportunity. Big, when you hear this, you can go into chat and take that Baker Mayfield victory lap. I don't know if you've done that properly in a while, so then go do that. Mayfield's on a tear right now.
Yep. Yeah, I remember when that trade happened, and we basically said, "Oh, it was a free tier down there in the same tier. He's just getting free picks on top." And turned out they were not in the same tier. And Baker was clearly the best quarterback in that group.
Yeah. Much better than Garoppolo. That was one that I definitely got wrong. Anyway, enough of that. Let's not get too much into praising Big here. Next highest scoring matchup. Triddle had a 214.69. He gets the double win, moves to 6-6. Nice to see him turning things around. And on the other side of things, Benign Rug puts up a 140.33, drops to 1-11. Same old story there. For Rug, it's we basically are just at this point watching Jaden Daniels every week and
yep,
seeing how the rookies pan out.
Jaden Daniels continues to impress, and Drake May with a good debut for fantasy. At least it was a shaky real life start, but he got there for fantasy. Yeah, it gave the offense life they have not had with Jacoby Brissett.
Yeah. The offense scoring.
They scored 3 touchdowns.
Yeah, 21 points is a drastic improvement in New England. So I guess that's a good sign. On the other side of things, it was a solid day for the Eagles, which means it was a solid day for Criddle.
Yep.
Not a huge boom performance from anyone outside of George Kittle. Criddle ends up with a 38-point day at the tight end position. Actually, a very, very good day on the other side of things for Rugg. A 30-point day from Hunter Henry and Jatavian Sanders. So nice to see this Sanders rookie getting a good start in there.
Yeah, the best part for me was seeing a fullback in the lineup, in a winning lineup, no less.
You don't see a lot of it.
Kyle Juszczyk stealing that touchdown.
Yeah. I mean, of all the fullbacks in the league, I feel like he's the most common touchdown scorer. Don't fact check me on that, but I feel like he gets a few every year. Our next highest scoring team was H&H Bagels. Georgia Mike put up a 202.7. Oh no, I lied because he lost.
It's in the same matchup though.
Well, here's the thing. For whatever reason, I always assume that the winning side should be on the left and that the losing side should be on the right, but it's not.
It's never.
So anyway, Georgia Mike, unfortunately for him, lost to Festivus. Flinch put up a 213.1. Sorry about that, everyone. So Flinch goes 2-0. He improves to 10-2. Georgia Mike splits it, goes 1-1, moves to 8-4. That's a close matchup right there for two teams over the median.
Yeah, these are both looking like playoff teams. Yeah. Both put up good weeks.
Let's take a quick look at the real story for Flinch. The difference in this matchup, he got a 28-point day from Cole Kmet. I want to touch on this because we discussed Cole Kmet at the very beginning of the year, where we were saying how Everett was apparently getting a lot of those offensive snaps and how they shouldn't be doing that. Thankfully, it appears as though Matt Eberflus listens to Cross Coast Bias and took that advice to heart.
The problem was the first 3 weeks of the season, this offense resembled the Seahawks, thanks to their
Shane Waldron acquisition.
Shane Waldron. And then something changed after the first 3 weeks. Probably
they listened to
losing horribly every week and the offense looking like crap. They changed the offense, and it's been much better since then. They've been running pretty much all 11 personnel to get their 3 talented receivers out there. They've moved Everett to a very minimal role, and Kmet's out there full time, which it's led to a lot of success for the offense. So I don't expect that to change.
Yeah, Kmet's looked good. The offense has looked much improved. 2 touchdown day for Kmet. And it's interesting because obviously Georgia Mike has Caleb Williams on the other side of things, who also had a very good day, 32-point day. But it hurts a lot when your quarterback throws touchdowns to your opponent's tight end.
Yeah, especially when they're a tight end.
Yeah.
Because those points count for quadruple for some reason.
All right. Not a ton else to get to here. I want to mention that Kyle Pitts, the recent acquisition, the big trade, that splash trade that Georgia Mike made last week, did make his lineup, did help get him over that median. Only a 13-point day, but still 70 yards.
He had a bunch of new acquisitions in his lineup again every week. We've seen that he keeps adding players.
Well, I mean, when you add 6 guys a week, eventually they're going to make a roster.
Bucky Irving was his running back 1.
Yep.
Chase Brown, we picked up the week before, was his running back 2.
Yeah.
Kyle Pitts in there, Austin Eckler, Rico Dowdle. Yeah, a lot of new acquisitions adding to that depth.
Trevor Lawrence. All right, we got one other matchup to get to. It was my matchup. I lost to Flea's team. Flea goes 1-1 because unfortunately for her 198.92 was just below that league median. So Flea goes 1-1 and her team goes to 8-4. I put up a 100.78 and I moved to 1-11, going 0-2 on the week.
The reason she was under the median was her formerly robust quarterback room was down to just Dak this week in his 1 point.
Yeah. Dak had a 1.22 in her lineup. Unfortunate. Dallas just got killed. Dak threw some interceptions, took a bunch of sacks. The whole team basically imploded. Not great.
Yeah, not great.
On the other side of things, there's really nothing worth talking about on my team except for Brock Bowers remains excellent.
How about the fact that you had both San Francisco backup running backs in your starting lineup? Garendo and Patrick Taylor.
I meant what I said, not worth talking about. Anybody who's looking for a backup running back.
You don't want to talk about Troy Franklin's first career touchdown? Yep. That's your guy.
It is. I feel like this is what we're trying to avoid getting bogged down in, discussing Troy Franklin's first career touchdown. Nobody needs to really get it. We want to talk about something. Let's talk about Flea had a nice day from Bijan Robinson, because Robinson's been a little disappointing this year. 26.25 points on the day, though. It was a nice score.
Yep. And Evan Ingram coming back made a big difference for her.
Yeah, 27 points at the tight end position will help you out every time. 10 catches on 10 targets.
That's what she's been missing for the last couple of weeks. So,
yeah. Well, and it really helped spur that Jacksonville offense too, 16 points.
Pays the fantasy bills. That's all we care about.
Yep. Gets you there for fantasy. All right. Hopefully we got through the matchups a little bit quicker there. I'm going to do it now. I'm going to solicit things from people in the league here. If you want to hear us skim over the matchups faster, if you want to hear us focus more on specific things, tell us. We're trying to make something that people want to listen to here, and feedback is sometimes helpful. We haven't really asked for it before, but I feel like we should now. I don't know how you feel about that. I didn't run that by you first.
I mean, we close every show now saying, see you in the league chat.
That's true.
Being serious. You got a problem with me? Tell me about it.
Okay.
Was that too aggressive?
No, that's good. All right. We're going to move on to everyone's favorite segment now, the playoff odds as given to us by the Dynasty Daddy site. We're going to have some shakeups this week because your existential crisis continues to drop you down the playoff. All right. At the top of things, 98%, 98%, 97%. It's a basically three-way tie. All these teams currently are sitting at 10-2. It is Big, it is Mel, it is Flinch. These are the current clubhouse leaders. All of them basically guaranteed those playoff spots. They've started off hot, 10-2. It's a lot of ground already covered.
Yeah, it's early in the season, relatively early still, but the playoff picture is starting to become a little more crystallized. We're really down to 7 legitimate playoff shots with my team fading to oblivion.
Yeah. It's more that you're selling as well. If you were still buying and still trying to compete, I think you're pretty close there if you get a couple of guys back from injury and don't lose anybody else.
Right, which is why I'm selling.
Yeah.
Because that ain't gonna happen.
So our next two, 91% and 90%, Judd and Flea. Judd's at 9-3, Flea's at 8-4. These are both very strong teams who've had a little bit of unluckiness in their opponents and took a couple of losses that could have easily gone the other way. Like for example, Flea getting that 1-1 this week where she had a 1-point score from her quarterback.
Right.
So those two looking very, very likely to make the playoffs. It's after that where we see, you said it was 7 teams, so that's 5. The next 2 teams are Georgia Mike at 8-4, Criddle at 6-6. Georgia Mike's listed at 61%, Criddle's listed at 31%. You are also there still, 5-7, listed at 30%. But it seems pretty obvious that it's going to come down to either Georgia Mike or Criddle at this point, as opposed to you if you're going to be selling off. So
right. Mathematically, I'm still alive, but
yeah.
In reality, my team has faded.
So Georgia Mike with the early advantage. Criddle obviously not far behind. He's 6-6. He's 2 games back, but 2 games is literally just 1 week.
Yep, it's going to be a tight race with these 7 teams, I think.
Yeah, and we haven't checked in with Criddle to see where he's at, but he hasn't really been buying or selling lately. So he's looking like he's kind of holding course, and maybe he'll assess as we go along.
Yep, he did a lot of his buying early, both in the off season and early in the season.
And then after those, we have the bottom 4: JMC, myself, Rugg, and Mr. Good News. JMC still at 2%. I'm sure he'll join the rest of us at that less than 1% chance eventually.
Very shortly, we will all be there. The 5 of us. Won't take too many more weeks of this.
No, mathematically it'll happen eventually. It's a matter of time. All right, so that wraps up our playoff predictor odds here. Again, this is all on Dynasty Daddy. Anyone can go and check it out anytime. We like their site.
I like this site a lot better when it said my team was good.
I mean, we can lie and tell you your team's good. However you want to do it.
I don't like it as much when it tells me the reality.
All right, we're going to start a new segment here. We originally recorded a new segment at the end of our normal Tuesday recording, and we're both fairly certain that was terrible. So we're going to scrap that and do something new instead that was inspired by our lengthy league chat discussion on Waiver Wednesday, inspired by JMC's bidding on Grant Calcaterra or Calcaterra. Do you know how to pronounce his name? I feel like
I believe his name is Gravy.
Gravy, sure. Is this like Bones? Is this a Criddle thing that like it's just someone making a name up and trying to get the rest of us to go along with it? Stop trying to make fetch happen. The discussion was obviously inspired by our Wednesday waivers, which JMC won the bidding on Calcaterra there for $47. Bid with the next closest bid at 36, Flea at 26, Al here at 4, and Mel at 3. Obviously, some pretty big variation on the bids there.
Right. And the question was raised, what is the correct way to bid? Is there a correct way to bid? What is the correct bid?
Not only like what's the correct way to win a bid for one specific player, but what's the correct way to use your fab over the course of a season? You know, a limited resource that has got to last you the whole season. And obviously there's only so many ways you can use it. You know, there's just players that come up every week or every few days, but do you want to blow it all on 1 or 2 guys, get those big lottery shot tickets? Do you want to do more your approach where you try to spend single digits on everyone and try and have a lot of bites at the apple with your $0 bids, or some combination thereof, something in between? What's the way to go about it?
Right. It's definitely a multi-layered question, because it really depends on how you're measuring correct. I mean, is it correct to be the highest bid even if you double everyone else's bid? Well, it's correct that you bid enough to win the player, right? But maybe not the most efficient use of your resources, which are in fact a finite pool of fab. I mean, you can always trade for more, but everyone gets a set amount for the season.
If you knew that the winning bid on a player was going to be $47. Does that factor into your bidding? Are you just going to say, screw it, I'll go 48, or are you still going to bid what you see on the player? Like what's in this instance here?
I mean, it depends if I really want to win the player or not. If that's my goal, is just to get that player on the roster, then yeah, I'm going to bid as much as I need to make that happen. I think you also have to factor in what is the range of outcomes for this player.
Mm-hmm.
You know, is he quote unquote worth this large percentage of your fab? What are we expecting the production to be? And I think that's the harder part, because obviously we do not know. We're not great at predicting replacement players and how their performance is going to be. It's a little bit easier at, say, running back, where we can just expect, hey, this guy's going to inherit most of the workload from the starter. It doesn't really work that way for wide receivers, tight ends, quarterbacks. Even if they're getting the same number of snaps, that doesn't mean they're going to earn the same number of targets or opportunities as the starter would be. It's not necessarily a close enough to a 1-for-1 replacement. We don't always know how the game plan is going to change when a replacement player goes in there.
Yeah, and I mean, even if they earn the snaps, there's no guarantee that they're going to produce in the same way or even close to it. Obviously, we see that all the time at the backup quarterbacks coming in and
most
performing
cases,
like Snoop Huntley instead of like Tua Tagovailoa.
in most cases, there is a reason why these players are backups. But there are cases where players come in and maybe they just needed an opportunity that they didn't get originally. Maybe they were a lower drafted player, or someone who's kicked around the league a little bit, finally get in the right scheme, get the right opportunity, and all of a sudden now we have someone who performs even better than the starter. This does happen. It's in the range of outcomes. Yeah, so you have to factor that in as well. How likely is this guy to hit, which I think is very difficult for us to accurately predict. But I think the one thing you can factor in is what happens if this guy does hit. What if Grant Calcaterra just seamlessly replaces Goddard's production? Now he's probably worth a lot more than 47 fab in this league.
Yeah. Yeah, then if that's the case, then JMC got an absolute steal, basically giving up nothing but fab for a startable player.
Correct. Yeah, I think those need to be factored in, and probably that one a little more heavily, because that's one where it's easier for us to see the ceiling outcome.
So what I found most interesting about this discussion is that we had a lot of people saying different things, but there wasn't really a ton of disagreement. They were saying different but not conflicting things. Everyone was kind of focusing on a different aspect of this problem, which is interesting because, as you said, there's many factors to be involved, and each person weighs each of those different factors differently than the other one. So like somebody might say, well, it's more important to get the more bites at the apple, and somebody else is saying, well, it's more important to get that one specific player. Somebody else is saying, well, it's more important to use your resources properly. It's great that we have all these different opinions and different ways that managers are looking at it, because that's what makes fantasy interesting. It's what makes it so that the bids do have a variation from nearly half of 47% of your original starting budget, which is, obviously a sizable chunk. And I think Criddle gave us the exact math on it. I don't remember off the top of my head. 61% of his remaining budget, down to Mel at $3, which is 3.4% of his remaining budget. Obviously, those are very drastically different numbers, even more so than the actual cash bids.
Right. According to one of our resident scientists, because there are multiple in this league, there is an actual statistical correct answer on this bid.
Yeah. I don't know if I know some leagues have like a league historian title and everything. I think we need to get Criddle an official title in this league. It's not historian, because that's not what he's doing, but like he needs to have an official title after this
statistical breakdown.
Yeah, it was great. It was, like I said it at the time. That's the comments of the year right there.
Yeah, that was a very well thought out summary.
We basically said, all right, I'll be back in 20 minutes. And then 20 minutes later, he popped up with a dissertation. Right? I haven't seen work like that since I was in high school.
Yeah, that was wonderful. And we can't even call him our resident scientist because there are more than one in this league. So yeah, he definitely needs a title. We'll work on that.
That's a job for the commissioner right there, Mel. That's all you. Figure out official titles. I don't know if we're supposed to have a league historian or not either.
But yeah, going back to the fab bidding, I think that it really depends on what measure you're using to determine correct. Like you said, there's at least 3 different ways to look at it based on just winning the player outright or best efficient use of resources or even the post result of did this guy produce. That's kind of the last future measure that we don't really know at the time of the bidding. What if this guy produces 30 points this week, then yeah, that was the correct bid. If he produces 2 points, then maybe not.
The other factor that we didn't really discuss at all is when to use a lot of your fab. Obviously, the earlier in the season that you use it, the longer you're going to have those players on your team.
Right, you get a better benefit because you're getting the points over a longer period of time, potentially, if it's somebody that sticks in the lineup all year.
Exactly. Now, you go back to, I think it was after week 1, Flinch added Tyler Johnson for $78. Obviously spending a huge chunk. I don't remember the other bids on that player. And for some reason, I've got it pulled up right now. It won't let me look at them on mobile. Maybe you can pull it up on the desktop. But spending a huge chunk in week 1, I think, is generally speaking more advantageous than spending that huge chunk later on in the year, because week 1, you have uncertain usage rates, uncertain depth charts still. And, unfortunately for Flinch, Tyler Johnson hasn't really worked out this year. He had that one good game week 1 and then basically has done nothing since. But I think the process behind that bid was a sound one.
Right. And that goes back with the ceiling discussion, right? We're not sure exactly the chance of it happening, but the ultimate payoff is, yeah, this guy does turn into something that lasts for the entire season. Well, 16 weeks of benefit versus, 1 or 2 weeks at the end of the season.
And more than 16, obviously everything goes more than just the season for Dynasty, but
yeah, that's fair. If we're looking at even,
but that counts for everybody. Next year counts for all the players, no matter what week you pick them up in. So
right. But yeah, it's a much bigger potential payoff the earlier you get the player on your roster.
It was a fun discussion. I think at a couple points we had people that were, I don't think arguing is the right term, but I think everyone was, not everyone. I think a couple times we had people getting a little bit frustrated that like the other person just wasn't quite catching what they were saying, but the other person was trying to talk about something entirely differently, which is just the problem inherent with fully text-based communications. You don't get the inflection, you don't get the tone, you don't get the it doesn't move quite at the same pace. I feel like if we had all been on a Zoom meeting, that conversation would have been like 2 minutes long instead of 2 hours.
Well, I don't think I helped by starting the entire discussion with an offhand remark at a red light and then sat in traffic for another hour before checking back in to a disaster.
You chucked a grenade and then left.
Yeah, I was not intending to start this wildfire, but I'm glad we did because it led to a lively discussion in the league chat for most of the day.
Fascinating discussion.
And I think it definitely hit on some interesting topics, especially for us in the overall kind of philosophy of Dynasty, right? What is the best way to do things? I think it just depends on what your measure of success is, because I think there's multiple units here to measure it in.
Yeah, absolutely.
For those of you not in the league, Criddle did a AI summary of our discussion.
Yep. Yeah, so Criddle fed the entire chat into, was it Google Gemini, I think he said, and asks for a summary. And it was actually a very competent and well-written summary. One of the better uses of AI that I've seen lately.
Yes, because Dynasty Fantasy Football is the best use for AI technology.
Honestly, it's probably not bad. There's a lot of measurable outcomes that can be basically just turned into math. Criddle, calm down. Don't get excited. No, it's looking at a lot of just math outcomes. And obviously there's more that goes into it than just pure math. Otherwise we wouldn't do it. But, obviously the AI is going to be good at calculating things. It makes sense. Although it's got nothing to do with summarizing the discussion, I suppose.
Right.
So the other interesting waiver claim is that Cam Akers was about to come off of waivers as this entire discussion was going down. And Cam Akers was, I don't know who it was that dropped Cam. Flea dropped Cam Akers. And then basically immediately after she dropped him, because he was down on the depth chart and buried and not getting work, he got traded. He's headed back to Minnesota and suddenly looks like he's going to be in for a little bit more work because obviously Aaron Jones is injured.
Chandler has been horrible this year.
Chandler has not been great. We had this discussion of who's going to bid what. And Big flat out said, if you want to win Cam Akers, you need to bid at least $36 or something or beat $36. He said he upped his bid by $1 just to make sure that none of us sticklers called him out on it. So he upped his bid from 36 to 37 because he phrased himself in a certain way. But it was interesting. The next highest bid was 18. So he literally came out and told us this is what you need to do. And no one chose to do that.
What we found out was that Big is a man of his word.
Oh, yeah. Well, I feel like we probably already knew that. At least could be fairly confident in that.
He had his price he was willing to pay, and he shared that with all of us, and nobody was willing to beat it. So He now is the proud owner of one Cam Akers.
So that's the other part of the fab bidding discussion is it's the gamesmanship and playing against your league mates. You need to try to essentially outsmart them. If you know that someone is saying, I'm going to bid $37 and you are fairly reasonably confident that he's going to bid $37, well, you could just bid 38. But if you say, I'm going to bid $37 and then you bid 38 and the bidding runs and he bid $4, well, you're going to feel like kind of, dumb.
Yeah, and this goes back to the efficiency versus just flat out trying to win the player and get him on your roster, right?
Well, it does, but I feel like
there's definitely some gamesmanship with blind bidding.
Exactly. It's the meta game of the bidding, knowing, how does this league generally value this sort of thing? Like obviously tight end for the initial discussion here is way more valuable on waivers than a lot of other things. Well, like in a general redraft league, like in say the redraft league that you and I played in for years, the first time a major running back injury took place and the backup was available on waivers, everyone would kind of be like, all right, what's the bidding going to be this year? Is it going to be, a third of the budget, half the budget, 40% of the budget? And then that would essentially set the budget for what backups were going to run for most of the rest of that season. Yeah. And obviously there was always deviation from that when somebody really wanted something, but I remember a couple times, the first backup went for like $33 and then the next one went for like 37 because somebody had a baseline. Whereas if that first one the next year went for 47, well, then the second one was going for 52. It sets a baseline and it sets a standard for a league. And obviously a dynasty league has a much longer history of waivers than just a standard redraft league. So it's interesting to see how that valuation changes over time and based on points in the season and, looking at your opponents in the league and saying, oh, look, Friddle's only got $52 left. I can guarantee this player at $53 over any bid he can make. And I know he's going to want him. So, go for it.
Right. This is just the league itself having its own market, which is unique to every league, right? There's guys that we saw Calcaterra go for 47 in this league and then go for 9 in a different league. Obviously not exactly the same settings, but to the same manager in both leagues. So every league definitely has its own unique market. That's why it's impossible to give someone fab advice, who should I pick up on waivers this week? How much should I spend? Well, every league is unique. You can't factor in blindly how much someone else might want them or what funds are available or any of these other nuanced factors that go into it. It's hard enough to do it when you're in the league every week putting in fab bits.
It's always amusing to me. I don't check out a lot of fantasy content anymore online. I generally stick to the real football content and make my own fantasy interpretations. But I've said before, when we go to do our injury section, I do a cheat by looking at waiver. I go on and try and find someone saying, "Oh, here's the big waiver pickups this week," because generally, if there's a big waiver pickup, it means somebody got hurt.
Right.
And a lot of the time, they offer fab advice in those, like, "Oh, 12% of your budget." And every time I see that, I'm just like, "You have no idea what you're saying."
Just useless information.
You're just picking a number. And like, I get it. They have to do it. People,
right.
People want that content. People want that help and everything. And, not to, speak poorly of people who use that, because we were all there at one point. But I look at it and I'm just like, this means nothing. And I'm sure the person writing it knows that it means nothing, because if they're at a stage where they're writing it, they have all this information themselves.
Yep. Yeah, that's just an impossible task because every league is so unique. And it works like that for general player trade values as well. Every market is its own isolated thing. Yeah. So it's difficult to give broad advice.
Your Mr. League settings.
Well, that's without taking into account league settings. Two leagues with the same exact settings could value two players very differently.
They always do. Every league has its own market.
Right. So that definitely comes into play with fab bidding as well.
It does. It does for sure. Now, we've strayed far enough, I think, at this point from our original discussion. Anything else you want to touch on?
No, that was a good discussion, I think, about some of the philosophy of Dynasty. I think this should be a regular segment. Maybe even expanding it out to like the round table. Like a round table, yeah.
Maybe somebody mentioned that in chat that we need the round table. Yeah, might have been
you. Maybe a round table format for this going forward.
We'll plan a couple off-season in-depth ones. We'll bring various managers on and let them wax poetic about their philosophies.
Yeah, because we have very different philosophies competing in this league.
We do.
And it's fun to see because there's definitely multiple ways of doing it, quote unquote, correctly.
Yeah. Yeah, there's more than one way to skin a cat.
Right. I didn't want to say that because it's a horrible image, but thanks.
You're welcome. Glad I could put that in your head on a Thursday morning. All right, that's going to wrap us up for this week. We will be back next week as usual. And until then,
see you in the league chat.